Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your boy Chris B. Daniels, once again back at it on Show and Talk. So, we are going to continue our Beyond Belief Fact to Fiction series review. And this is episode 13 in season 2. Actually, the last episode for this season. But before we get started, there's one thing, it's a nitpick, I know. I got to say about the show. Like I said, it's minuscule, but I want to just mention it. I feel like I have to mention it. They really didn't put too much thought into the title of these stories. Like, honestly, in this episode, the stories are called The Warning, Bus Stop, The Cure, The Guardian, The Gift. I mean, I know it's simple and straightforward, but sometimes I go back and look at the previous episodes with them stories, and sometimes I feel like the titles didn't match what the story was about. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But anyway, every single story on this episode ends on a positive note, except maybe the first one. Depends on how you look at it. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, without further ado, let's get started. So, story number 1 is called The Warning. Now, this one, it was kind of funny to me. You know what I'm saying? While I was watching it, I wasn't really laughing. I was snickering here and there due to the fact that, you had a mortician walking around with a casket inside of a hotel. So when this couple gets to the hotel, they're there for a seminar. And so while they're at the desk checking in, the husband notices this guy walking around with a casket. And then when he tries to, get his wife to, turn around and look, she doesn't see anything. And so we all know at this point that it's either in his head or he's the only person that can see this guy. So after they check in, they're walking down the hallway to get to their room. Or no, they're looking for the seminar. And so the guy, he accidentally walks into this room with the same casket that the gentleman was walking with earlier. And so he was looking at it until the guy, the mortician or whatever, walks in and scares the shit out of him. So the guy turns around and the mortician kept trying to get him to get inside the casket. So the guy backs away and he's trying to leave, but the mortician kept on talking, you know what I'm saying? Trying to basically sell him his death. You know what I mean? And this part of the story was kind of funny to me. I'm not even going to lie. Death is not funny, but it's just the way the story was written. You know what I'm saying? You'll probably snicker a little bit too. The guy kept trying to get him to basically die. But because I feel like if he would have got inside that casket, the door would have shut on him and he wasn't able to open it for some reason. That's just the way I felt about it. But anyway, the guy, he takes the mortician's business card and then he leaves. And he meets back up with his wife. And then they're about to get on this elevator. So when the doors open, the husband, he's hesitant on getting on the elevator because he sees the mortician on the elevator with the other 4 people that were on there. You know what I'm saying? So the guy was telling his wife that they'll just take the stairs or, whatever. And so the wife, she started to believe that he was tripping and something was wrong with him until the second the elevator doors closed, the whole elevator just dropped and the cord snapped. And everybody on there pretty much were killed. And so I feel like instead of the guy trying to get him to die at that point, I felt like, he saved his life. Because if he never saw that guy, the mortician on the elevator that nobody else could see, then yeah, he would have went down with the rest of them. But I'll give this story a 8 out of 10. It was pretty good, but I don't know. It was pretty good. It was a good starter for this episode. But moving on, story number 2, Bus Stop. Now, it wasn't too long ago when I seen this one, seemingly for the first time in years, because I really didn't remember how this story went down, but it's about this guy, right? And he's driving down the street and he spots this woman sitting at a bus stop. And so she looks worried that she missed the bus, and she asked the guy, has he seen the bus? And he told her that the bus pretty much broke down, up the street. And so she decides to ask him for a ride. Now, obviously her mother never taught her about strangers, you know what I'm saying? Getting in the car with strangers, but this guy, the way this guy looked, he looked very harmless. He looked harmless. So I guess she decided to take that chance to get in the car with him so, he could drop her off at home. But I mean, it's a story, it's just the way it was written. But anyway, when they finally get to her house, the guy was, being hesitant, but he really wanted to get to know her because they got close as they was driving down the street on the way to her house. So he felt like either he should get her number now or he possibly could never see her again. So the next day, he pulls back up at that same bus stop, but she wasn't there. And so instead of trying to figure out what happened or giving up, he decides to show up at the girl house. You know what I'm saying? And so he gets out the car. Homeboy got some nuts. You know what I'm saying? Like, bruh, if this was a real life situation, it'd be considered stalking. But again, it's just a story. So anyway, he knocks on the door, and a different woman answers the door. It turns out that the woman he gave the ride to was this woman's sister who answered the door. And so he explained, what was going on, and she decides to let him in. I'm like, damn, these people really ain't got problems with strangers. Strangers, you know what I'm saying? First, the sister gets in the car with him, and then the other sister lets him in the house. So anyway, but once again, it's a story. But anyway, she tells him to come in, make himself at home, and he goes over to the pictures that's sitting on the mantle or the table, and he's trying to figure out, who the sister was because he didn't see her in any photo until the sister comes up behind him and starts pointing out herself, showing him her photos with her sister and all of that. And there's one particular photo that she showed him that made him scratch his head. It was a photo where the woman he gave a ride to was helping his sister learn how to ride a bike. And the woman he gave a ride to looked so much older. So it's revealed that the woman he gave the ride to was actually dead. She had passed away 8 years before. And so when they sat on the couch and started talking, because originally he wasn't going to tell this girl what happened. You know what I'm saying? Because he probably would have thought that she thought he was a lunatic, but he decided to spill the beans and told her everything. So next thing you know, the guy told this girl his name, and she told him that his sister will always make sure, no, her sister will always make sure that a Mr. Right will come into her life. And next thing you know, a year to that day, they got married. And I thought it was a pretty good ending. You know what I'm saying? It was wholesome, PG. But yeah, this story for me gets an 8 out of 10. I like it. It wasn't too bad. The next story is called The Cure. Now, I feel like this is probably the most important story in the episode. So it's about this college kid. He's going to school for medicine and all of that, right? And his girlfriend pulls up, and she's a rich spoiled chick, you know what I'm saying? So they're making plans, I guess, for the weekend. But instead of old boy wanting to hang out with just her, the med student, he wanted to meet her parents, but she was very hesitant on letting him meet them, you know what I'm saying? Because she felt like her dad would have judged him for, the type of the type of medicine not medicine, but the type of program he was in. You know what I'm saying? He was trying to become a doctor and all of that, but the field he wanted to get into was the lowest paying field. You know what I mean? And then she felt like her dad would have judged him just for that. And so he got frustrated with her. He winds up breaking up with her. You know what I mean? And so he started a new job that night because not only was he going to school, he also had three part-time jobs. And so he started this new job because he was supporting himself, getting himself through school. And while he was in the restaurant taking orders, there was this guy at the table with this other woman, which, was the man's wife. Like after the kid gave him the dessert, something happened. Like he was holding his chest, and it turns out he was having a heart attack. So the med student lowered the guy to the floor slowly, and he did the Heimlich and all of that, and he saved his life. So the older gentleman thanked him for saving his life, and it turns out that the guy that he saved was his girlfriend's father. And so that's how this story ended. It was fate that brought all of them together. So now she didn't have to introduce him to her father because he saved his life. And I give this story a 10 out of 10. I feel like it was important. You know what I'm saying? Not only because you shouldn't judge somebody by what they're doing, you got to judge their character. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, moving on to the next one. This one is called The Guardian. Now, I like this story. I loved it, actually. You know what I'm saying? It's about this kid who goes to the park every afternoon after school to play ball. And so one afternoon, his brother shows up with him, and they sitting there watching this dude named Big Al play because he comes to the park every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he leaves at 5 to go to a job. And so as they're sitting there admiring him, you know what I'm saying, on his skill, the younger brother, he tells them that they needed to get home because early in the morning, their mother made them promise that they be home before dark. And so the older kid was telling the brother that, basically you can go on home. I'm staying here. And so the kid was like, all right. And so he left. And then after a while, these two dudes show up, right? Like these two gangster looking dudes. They show up, and one of the dudes took his ball and wouldn't give it back to him. And so he had passed it to this other guy that was standing behind the kid. And so they were trying to rob him basically. And the one guy pulls out a pocket knife, threatening to, basically like flatten his ball or whatever. And so before he was able to do that, Big Al shows back up, saving the kid. So he gives him his ball back, and he threatens the other two kids, and then they run off. So the next day, the little brother is telling the older brother, you know what I'm saying? He needs to go to the park and thank Big Al for what he did the day before. Otherwise, he was going to tell their mother that for whatever reason, the kid was walking around with their dad's pocket watch, or that he basically disobeyed their mother. And so after school, they went to the park, and they was thanking Big Al for what he did. But Big Al didn't know what they were talking about, right? So they just gave up and went on home. And next thing you know, the camera pans in on the ground, pans, to this image on the ground. It's like an angel. I guess the little girl who was out there at the beginning of the story, who's always drawing something, drew the angel. And that's basically what they're suggesting that saved his life. So for me, I would give this story I give it an 8.5. It was all right. It was kind of hard to score this one, but it was pretty good. All right, folks, we're on the last story. Now, this one right here is about this woman. She's a home health aide, and she's like a living aide actually. So she's taking care of this old woman, right? And she's telling the old woman, stories about, her wanting to be married one day, and the old woman was really like, she treated her like she was her own daughter. And next thing you know, her actual daughter showed up to the house because they knew their mother was about to pass away at any day. And so I ain't gonna lie, they were bitches, both of them. So they started throwing shit away, right? And then after the old woman passed away, because she told the girl that was taking care of her that she can, it was a particular item in the house that she was going to give to her, but she couldn't find it. So while the other two were in there, they were cleaning up the house, just throwing away stuff. You know what I mean? Didn't know what they were throwing away. They was just cleaning up because they said they had families to get back to. And so the woman, the girl, the aide, she found this little thing. Y'all know those things I'm talking about, right? I can't think of it right now, but they put it on top of the cake. It's like a bride and a groom, one of those little cake toppers or whatever. But she winds up taking that over anything else in the house. So the other two women were basically telling her that, you could take whatever you want, help yourself to whatever. And so they left. And then later on that night, while the girl was asleep upstairs, the oven had went off because she had made some tea. And I guess she left it on the oven, but she had turned everything off. But next thing you know, the tea started going off. The little teapot started going off, and she heard it. And she came downstairs and turned the light on. Next thing you know, the little cake topper, it was sitting close to the oven, and it was melted. So inside of the cake topper, it was these 2 diamond earrings. And it turned out that they were worth thousands of dollars. So that was basically the old woman's gift to the girl for basically being there for her and taking care of her and everything else like that. So I feel like it was suggested to me that she cared more about this girl than her own daughters, because her daughters, to me, was treating her like shit. You know what I mean? All they wanted from the old woman was just her money and the house or anything else or whatever. But the story turned out to be positive, just like the rest of them on here, except for the first one. But anyway, that's the end of that story. I get that one same thing, 8 out of 10. So this episode right here, every single one of these stories dealt with fate. Most of the time it was positive. Only once where it was negative, but yeah, this was an uplifting episode I feel like, if you're down and out, just check out this episode. It's episode 13, season 2. It'll make you feel better. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry, it is what it is, but this episode was very uplifting. I know I'm repeating myself, but who cares? Anyway, overall, this episode for me gets a 10 out of 10. Positive. So that's going to do it for this episode of Show and Talk. And I will talk to y'all later. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. I will greatly appreciate that. And y'all have a great night. I will talk to y'all later. Peace.
The feeling is mutual. Come in, take a seat, share your thoughts with each, and preach it when you speak, so we can share kinetic energy throughout the brainwaves to keep us balanced out and all on the same thing.